Hello and welcome to the Corporate Facility Council's first Wednesday webinar. As FMs are, your C-suites asking what is being done to ready the workplace for your employees' return safely. Presented by Christian Flanders, FMP. I do want to let everyone know that they have been muted for audio quality. If you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free to type them into the question box, and we will go over them during the Q&A portion at the end of the webinar. I also want to let you know that this webinar is being recorded and will be made available on the CFC's website, ifmacfc.org. At this time, I'm happy to turn it over to Wayne, the CFC Secretary and Programs Chair. Wayne, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Joshua, and as always, thank you to you and the components team for such great support for all of the councils and the chapters around the country. You guys are awesome, so thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen and everybody, I am excited about this presentation. Christian Flanders is someone that I've known since about 2005, 2004. We met at the Sacramento chapter where Christian was a leader in just about every role in that chapter and led that chapter to multiple awards of excellence awards, chapters of the year, website, you name it, and multiple chapters of the year, as a matter of fact. And I've come to really appreciate Christian's insight and take on anything to do with design. But the nice thing about Christian, that I think why he and I get along so well, is Christian understands that there's an O&M impact to everything that design chooses. So he kind of connects those dots. So we have a lot in common that way professionally. Personally as well, Christian is an avid traveler and an avid music fan, and really enjoys. He's a foodie, so there's a lot of great stuff here. If you ever get to know Christian, he's a really super fun guy. I want to mention that this topic is important for us in the FM community because we need to know where these trends are going so that we can predict not only what is going to be happening and provide that information to our C-suite and people in our organization, but how we plan to do maintenance on these changes that may be coming. So I'm very excited about this topic, and the CFC is the place to get this kind of content. If you have any questions about joining the CFC, please reach out to us through our website. Happy to talk to you about any questions. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to my good friend Christian Flanders, the workplace consultant for Workplace Solutions, which is a Steelcase premier partner. Christian, it's all yours.
All right. Welcome, everyone. My name is Christian Flanders. Thank you, Wayne and Josh, for the introduction. I'm very happy to be presenting to the CFC. Presented to you all a couple of years ago when I was with WeWork on how co-working was changing facilities and corporate real estate. And then last year, shortly after this time, the world changed, and I think we are all as placemaking real estate facilities professionals looking for answers. And what the answers were maybe 4 months ago are not the answers now. And it's an evolving situation, as we all know, that we're all affected by. But I'm sure you've all experienced through your LinkedIn accounts or your periodicals that you read, the FM Journal. It's the big topic right now. How do we get people back safely to work? But I'm going to take it to another level today and say it's not just about workplace safety involving COVID. It's about working better once we do get the people back. And we'll go into that in a little more detail. So I'm going to jump in. Wayne, if you've ever seen him present, he does his fantastic presentation, Death by PowerPoint. He travels around the country. So my face is going to pop back up a few times so we can talk about individual slides. But right now, let's get into the presentation. So work better is going back to a better experience, and that is just keying in on that there have been a lot of issues building in the workplace for many years. Open space versus private space, collaborative spaces, how we address different generations in the workplace, how we address neurodiversity, and this is our kind of watershed moment to when people do come back to work, address those issues as well, and not just COVID safety. We've all seen it, right? It's on LinkedIn all day. It's on the news all day. I bet if I could see any of you, which I can't, there are many of you working from home right now, some at their kitchen table, some on a couch, some maybe in a bedroom. Some of you probably are working in poor lighting. Some may have their kids there, pets, distractions, different things. And we're going to talk about how working from home is greatly going to influence changing how we work once we get back. Again, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but you have seen these articles everywhere. They flood my feed, but there's a lot of great information out there by a lot of very well qualified people, including some members of IFMA, like Kay Sargent, who's part of our Workplace Evolutionaries group. If you don't know what Workplace Evolutionaries is, and you do have responsibility for the built environment and the design of the workplace, I encourage you to join that. They're sort of a council, more of a working group. I encourage you to join that group. They have a lot of great information. But this is going to be about a Steelcase study that was done in partnership with MIT and other organizations, including HOK, and getting science-based and data-driven information on what we need to do to change the workplace to make it safe and engaging. So Steelcase did 8 primary studies, 10 countries, 32,000 surveys and conversations, and 8,000 floor plans analyzed. I have deep dive information about each country if any of you have facilities in Asia or Europe or other locations, but we're just going to give an overview of the results of this study today. So some of you may see this slide and it may look familiar. This is what we are doing right now. So right now in design, we're addressing the now, the near, and the far, right? The now may be working from home or working in less dense workplaces, as you can see in this picture in the upper left here.
Christian,
We're spacing
can you share your slide? Your slide isn't sharing on the screen.
My slide isn't sharing on the screen. Can you see my slide?
Now
Wayne,
it's showing,
can you see?
yes.
Okay, sorry,
Yes.
folks. Nothing, again, working from home, technical difficulties. So this is the slide I was addressing. If you all can see, and Wayne, maybe you can confirm that we have a less dense workplace in the upper left, right? We have
Correct.
people spread out. That's a Band-Aid we're putting on the situation right now, right? We may be doing temperature checks. We have occupancy that we're addressing. And we have things like screens on top of desk on existing workstations and tables to protect employees from each other and the transmission. But it's not just about going back to work and addressing COVID. It's about going back to work and working better. And why do we know that? Because we surveyed people and they told us. So we're going to learn about what science can teach us and what these surveys and these many different measurements we did. And we're going to come back and build a workplace that's not only safe, but it's compelling. And I heard an interesting quote yesterday in my training that said, what is compelling? Compelling is better than what you had at home that is going to compel people to come back and work in the office, or a hybrid of working in the office. So we'll talk a little bit about the studies themselves. Mitigation, mitigation, identifying, detecting, and preventing the spread of COVID. With MIT, we also work with materials research labs. There are things like work surfaces that are antimicrobial. We have space scans that can identify spots in the workplace where people are congregating that may be high risk spreading spots. We are working on with MIT and our healthcare community is working on COVID identification and alert systems. And then we also have prevention, right? I am not in the HVAC business, but I bet a lot of you on this call know a lot more than me about the HVAC business. And I know from some of the seminars I attend, we are doing greater air exchange in buildings, different filtration systems of air purification, and we're addressing this from a multi-pronged approach. So now we're going to get into the meat of it. So when we surveyed employees all over the world about their work from home experiences and their expectations of the workplace, we identified some different folks. And these folks may have some overlap. But I want to go over this a little bit because I think it's really important. We have the isolated Zoomer, right? And I will say I'm the isolated Zoomer. I live alone. I don't have any children. Um, you know, when I work at home, it's the lonely cage, right? I want to return to the office because I trust my employee to take the necessary precautions, or I hope they would. I like to engage with people. I like having my resources there. I don't like being on Zooms all day. For me, it lowers my motivation. But we have the autonomy seeker. We have the opposite. We have folks who home office is freedom. They can do their Zooms, they can multitask, they can take care of their kids, they can do the different things that they need to address during the day. And working from home is freedom. How do we address a new go back to office workplace that's going to satisfy both of those folks? We have the frustrated creative workers. For many of you who run corporate facilities or tech facilities, home office is a suspension from the normal life and work. So I'd say I'm maybe a little combination of isolated Zoomers and frustrated creative networkers. The overworked caretaker. Home office is a nonstop flow of competing demands, right? Um, these are the folks that have kids and need to take the kids to school. The kids are home, learning from home. It's really become a chore for these folks to balance their workday and their personal duties at the same time. And then finally, we have the relieved self-preservationist. The home office is the only place I am safe. They are afraid of COVID, right? They're afraid of getting sick, and rightly so. And this is their shelter from the storm. And they may be apprehensive about going back to work. So we also surveyed these folks. It was very interesting. People liked, right, the no commute of working from home. People liked working from home because there was no commute. People did not like working from home because of isolation. I think one of the interesting things that we're finding too is now that we are working from home for going on a year now, we are seeing that people are gradually less productive. I know for the first 3 months of COVID, I loved it. I was taking my Zooms and I was feeling fantastic and sitting on my couch, watching some Sports Center in between and doing my emails and my calls and talking to my clients. And that is gradually tapered off. People like no distractions. People like a range of settings. I can go work on the couch. I can go work on the kitchen table. I can go work at a coffee shop. Maybe I can go work on a patio somewhere. They chose where they could work, where maybe they could not do that in their office, right? So people didn't like the slower decision making. When we're on a Zoom, we're not talking to people, having those millions, hundreds of little conversations that we have a day by the water cooler as someone walks by your workstation. We're not having those conversations anymore. And we're waiting to have to get on the Zoom or send an email to enhance communication, and it's affecting us. So this is really neat. Of all the people we surveyed, out of the thousands and tens of thousands of people, this is what people saw, right? In office, people see 23% of people wanting to go back to the office full time, or what their expectation is. 5% see themselves working from home. 72% is a hybrid. And that's where we are, is the hybrid. How do we balance the work from home and get safe, engaging workplaces that 72% of the people are going to want to come back and work at? I really like this quote. Organizations must use this moment to break from the inertia of the past. A well-planned return to the offices can use this moment to reinvent their role and create a better workplace. So I think this one, I'm going to pause for a minute here. I think this one is important because it's not just about COVID. And if you are just putting in enhanced cleaning practices, if you're cleaning your high touch work areas, if you're decreasing your density, if you're adding screens, maybe you're even doing staggered work times or staggered arrival times, it's not enough because people want a way to work different because of the effect working from home has had from them. Moving forward, so 5 things people need and expect. This is going to get now down into the nitty gritty of the surveys and studies we've been doing. The 5 things people need, the 4 macro shifts in how we think about the workplace based on those expectations, and then the new design principles from those macro shifts that we need to apply into the workplace for creating better spaces. So we identified 5 things people need. MIT, us, and all of our real estate partners and architecture partners identified 5 primary things that people need in the workplace when they get back. Safety, obviously, belonging, inclusion, trust, and shared purpose is part of belonging. And there's an HOK study, because we only have a limited amount of time. If you look up HOK, Steelcase workplace study, it's going to go into that in a little bit more detail. There were a lot of political issues and a lot of diversity issues, a lot of environmental issues that have been bubbling to the top in the way we design workplaces over the last probably 5 years, big time the last 2 years, and belonging and comfort are big parts of that. So I encourage you to look up that study. Anybody can message me and I'll share it with them, but it really digs into that a little bit more in those topics. Productivity, this was a huge one. I've been around long enough in workplace design. I've been here 23 years doing workplace design, that I was here at the dawn of the open office, and I saw the open office be somewhat of a success, but then I saw a little bit of a writing of the home office, of the open office, where it went a little too far. Maybe some of you have faced that in your facilities, to where people wanted areas where they weren't distracted, where they could focus and do heads down work. So that was bubbling to the surface. Comfort, the 3 issues of comfort: physical, cognitive, and emotional. We're going to go into that in greater detail. And then control, right? People want to be able to choose where they work, how they work, when they have their heads down time, when they have their collaboration time. So this is kind of down to the facilities O&M related issues of safety. In the survey, the top issues in safety were air quality, right? We talked a little bit about how HVAC companies are going to be addressing this from a more of an air exchange, better filtration systems in buildings. And I am just going to show you something real quick here. So we even are seeing in our industry individual for rooms and offices and workstations, individual air filtration systems, which you see here, that I have available, that we have available. They can be put per workstation, per conference room, per collaboration area. It's a personal air filtration system that has 5 different layers of filtration that gives the person another level of safety that they experience. And this shows antimicrobial, high efficiency HEPA filter, honeycomb activated carbon filter, cold catalyst filter, and a UV sterilization filter. So this may be the next thing. If you really want to offer your employees control and safety, we have personal units we can use in your facilities that are actually also mobile. So the top 3: air quality, adherence to safety protocols, and facility cleanliness. I know Wayne is working a lot on facility cleanliness, and not all cleaning companies or not all vendors know the level of cleaning that needs to be done to prevent the transmission of COVID. And it is really a new world of cleaning as well. I think Wayne recently did a program on this to the Sacramento chapter and has done it to other ones. Density was okay, but look where food and beverage is down at the bottom, right? So air quality, adherence to safety. And I think the adherence to safety really goes down to trust, right? Trusting that the leaders of your organization, that your facility management team, that you trust them to put in the right practices to where you feel safe to go back to work. And we can all be part of that as the facility management community. Belonging, right? We measured community metrics, we measured workplace attributes, and it came out that, excuse me one second, the outcomes of addressing belonging is increased productivity, engagement, retention, and innovation. And isn't that what we all want? We've all been talking about retention and attraction, But we really want workplace attributes where there's a leader presence, social spaces that are stimulating, inspiring. Instead of looking at your kitchen or your bedroom all day long, you want to go back to a workplace that is inspiring and allows you to engage and be productive and innovate as companies. So productivity, we talked about this a little bit earlier. Performance suffers when people are unhappy working from home. Over the course of COVID, we saw it tick up for the first few months, but currently, as of the last quarter, engagement is down 14% and productivity is down 12%. That's a lot of bottom line dollars right there, folks. Productivity, continuing into productivity. This is interesting. We surveyed both leaders and employees of companies, right? And interesting, both of them ranked collaboration as the #1 issue that aids productivity, right? And they both put focus, leaders put it at the very bottom, and employees put it towards the bottom, right? So even though we want a place to have heads down work like we were able to do at home without distractions, if you're not having your kids distract you or other things, it wasn't as high. People valued collaboration more. That's why they want to go back to the workplace, to have that human interaction and interact with their teams and be more productive. So comfort, 3 levels of comfort: physical, cognitive, and emotional. So we'll talk a little bit about physical. I'm sure some of you have gone to ergonomics seminars before. Physical, they want a wide range of postures, settings, and the ability to move. We have height adjustable workstations now. We have ergonomic chairs. We have wellness. We have healthy vending machines. So they want physical health, being physically healthy, but I think we're underestimating the cognitive and emotional. We want a distraction-free environment and the ability to reconnect to their organization's shared purpose. I don't know if I feel as motivated and feel as much of a part of my company if I'm not physically interacting with my coworkers and seeing them, if I'm seeing them once or twice a day on a Zoom. There's an emotional distance there. Control. So this is really interesting. 54% of people surveyed want to work from home 1 day a week or less. 2 to 3 days a week or less, it's maybe a little over 25%. And 4 to 5 days a week, it's probably 20%, right? So we have this broken down by country, but if this slide tells you anything, it should tell you that people want to come back to the office, and we need to find out a way to make it safe and engaging for them. And when they come back to the office, most workers want to be able to reconfigure their furniture or their environment so that they have control and safety, both emotional, physical, and cognitive. 38% of the time, they only felt that they had that in their existing workspace. That number needs to go up so they feel safe. So the 4 macro shifts that these studies, and believe me, these studies are thousands of pages long, and we have them broken down by country. But the macro shifts that we need to incorporate into the workplace are safety, productivity, inspiration, and flexibility. These are nothing that we didn't talk about in the previous slides. These are just boiling them down a little bit. And then we're going to take these 4 macro shifts and we're going to see how we can apply them into design principles. So we're going to talk a little bit about how do we go from and to, right? Where are we at now with safety and where do we need to go? So for safety, I have been at many a World Workplace Smart Buildings seminars, and I think that's going to be more important than ever. We're going to need to know what conference rooms are occupied. We're going to need to see where high traffic areas are. We're going to need to see facilities work orders and address them faster to prevent transmission of COVID. It's going to be a systematic approach to mitigate disease, and smart buildings are going to be a huge, huge part of that integrated approach in health and safety standards. Productivity. Where we are right now is efficient single-purpose spaces. And I want to talk to you about that a little bit. So when we design a workplace, what we used to do is we would say, how many conference rooms do you think you need? How many workstations? How many employees do you have? Do you need a break room? How many people eat lunch at one time? Do you want to put a gym in? We would ask them the functions of the purposes of those spaces and program spaces accordingly. That's got to go. So now we need to create multimodal spaces that balance the individual and team needs. So we may have a conference room that also needs to be a learning room and also needs to be a touchdown space. The old boardroom down the middle of the conference room, that may still have a purpose in certain aspects, but you'll see in future slides why we need to look to making that a multifunctional room. And then before, what was it all about? Attracting talent, right? We want to attract and retain talent. And so we wanted to build these really cool workspaces. If you were a tech company with ping pong tables and break rooms and on-site food services, and we'll attract all the young engineers and professionals to come work for our company and stay with our company. But I think that's morphing now. Especially the younger generations, they want a sense of community through belonging. They want to address environmental issues. They want to address social impact. And for you, I'm Generation X, but for those Generation Y and Z folks, this is one of the main work issues for them. They want to feel inspired by their companies. And I want to give a quick example of this. Before I was here with Steelcase and Workplace Solutions, excuse me, I was with WeWork. Many of you know WeWork, in the news a lot. And they took a chance on a 46-year-old design professional. And I worked with all young folks. I mean, everybody was probably under 32 years old, incredibly educated, incredibly talented folks. And I really drank the Kool-Aid. I felt so inspired to be developing this disruptive technology or this disruptive workplace that has absolutely changed the way people work and companies work. And I'd work a ridiculous amount of hours at 46 because I really believed in the company and really believed in what they were doing. So don't underestimate that in your company's workplace design. And then finally, flexibility. Flexibility has been an issue for a long time, but I think we also need to address flexibility in architecture, right? Architecture right now is designed for permanence. I think we need to start looking at architecture as being flexible. Modular walls. I don't know if any of you are from the Bay Area, but if you go into any Chase Bank in the Bay Area, they're also co-working spaces, right? So I think that we need to look at architecture as not as fixed and designed for permanence, and we need to design buildings that adapt and support flexible ways of working. It can't all be addressed with furniture. It's got to also be addressed with architecture. So the 4 new design principles. These are important because we're starting to get down into the close view here. So me to we, okay? We need to balance workspaces for individual heads down focus work, which has always been a challenge in the open office floor plan. And we also need to still have collaborative spaces, right? We need to have fixed to fluid. We need to have spaces that are easily changed, possibly mobile, with ways we can change levels of privacy and division to help prevent transmission of COVID. And we also need to look closer at open and enclosed. And this is going to be interesting because we think about the open office as we either have enclosed workstations or enclosed offices, then we have open collaborative areas, or we have our workstations out in a big open floor plan. We're going to talk about open and closed in a little bit different terms. And then this one is probably the most important, is braiding the digital and the physical workspace, okay? The digital and the physical workspace, I can't tell you how many times we have technical issues. We had one here earlier when I started. If people are working from home, they're staring at a laptop. Do they have access to all of the technology they would have in the workplace at home? And if they're going to be working in different environments that they can change, is that technology readily available to them? So me versus we. There are 4 key space types within the workplace. We have our personal workstations. We have collaborative areas. We might have learning areas that can include conference rooms and training rooms. And then we also have social areas, such as break rooms, touchdown spaces, gyms, things like that. Well, we're going to start blurring the lines between those things. And we are going to address that with the workplace. So we're going to address that with fluid and adaptable work environments that can easily be changed into all 4 of these at any time. Fixed to fluid, multimodal. We talked about that earlier, right? Multimodal workspaces need to be able to be easily lifted. If people have, we don't need something that costs 40 pounds to lift, right? We need something where people can enclose an area if they're going to have a quick meeting and shield that area from maybe some workstations on the other side. But it's also got to have technology there and ways for people to interact. So highly mobile furniture. Big one is power. And I want to show you something here. I'm going to turn my camera back on. Hopefully you can all see me. So this right here, this is a simple take home. People can take these home in their backpacks. They can bring them to any conference room. They can bring them to the break room. They can bring them to a collaborative area. What is always the issue we've had when people have had collaborative areas? No access to power. If it's out in an open area, are there plugs nearby for their laptops? We need to think about this in different ways. There are different power. This thing can charge 2 full laptops very fast without running out completely from zero. So we need to have technology there that allows those people to be fixed to fluid at any time and have control of their workspace, and dividers that allow them to shield those areas from other people who may also be doing heads down focus work nearby. And again, flexible architecture elements that allows for multiple ways for us to reorganize the space. We'll go into a little bit about what that means in a second. So open and closed, right? So if you look at this access here, we have group activities on the bottom and individual activities on the top, right? So if you look at this here, we are going to have we may have a big open space in the gray right here, right? We may have a big open space where people can work right now and have a collaborative work environment, some couches, some tables, maybe some mobile tables, maybe some high tops and some stools. But we need to decrease the density in those areas. So the individual, the me, is going to be spread out in those open areas more. So those open areas are going to collaborative areas are going to have to get bigger. And then from within the more enclosed areas, we are also going to have to give people more room in an enclosed area. And we address that with density, right? A room occupancy that might have been a 10-person conference room may now be a 4-person conference room. So we need to think about enclosed spaces, how they balance me and we, and open spaces of how they balance me and we. The bottom line is this: more open team spaces with flexible boundaries. And we're going to show you some sample floor plans in a minute that address that. So here's an example of braiding the physical and the digital. This is a picture I took this morning of my workplace, right? This is right off of our lobby. And what do we see here? We have 2 screens on the wall. We have 2 screens over here. We have a room monitor over here that people can book from their mobile device or their laptop and book that so no other person is there or they're not congregating. They can reserve that room. We can walk by, and if someone's in that room, there's sensors in that room. It turns red if someone's in there. So even if we were visually to do a check across the room and we couldn't see someone in the room because maybe there's a wall instead of a glass wall, we can see if people are in that room and not congregate over there to help prevent transmission. We have right here, we have a mobile power device, right? And we also have a surface charger for your iPhones and your phones and your tablets. And then we also have power and pucks in this table here. And we have a mobile Microsoft Surface here that can be moved around to different places in the office for presentations. We have plenty of room for people to distance from each other. We can set a person back here, we can set a person here, we can set a person here, we can set a person over here. So I want you to start thinking about your workplaces like that. Great, you have a touchdown space where people can go have a cup of coffee and have an informal meeting, but do they have the technology nearby that they're going to need? There's the room sensors that you can book from your mobile app or from your laptop and get a room if you need to go have some heads down work or a small meeting. This is also a thing we have in the office where we can see which conference rooms are occupied, where we are in the office based on our mobile device at any one time, and we can see where people happen to be congregating or which workstations are occupied. So design principles and practice, right? The design principles and practice, these are the floor plans we're going to go through. So these are not exclusive to each other, right? We have learning spaces, we have individual spaces, we have collaboration spaces. They may be all in the same space now. So I'm going to show you this kind of generic floor plan here, and then we're going to show how it is addressed. So we have in the upper right here, we have spaces with acoustic and visual privacy to take focus time or video calls, right? And these are made out of modular walls. These can be reconfigured later. Maybe you want to turn this into a larger collaboration space. We can take out the dividers. Modular walls are something that has been very prevalent in Europe for many, many years because of the age of their architecture. And they, have always been trying to get a foothold in America. And I think COVID is really going to expand the use of modular wall systems in America. We're providing a range of options, providing a range of privacy options for solo work, right? So this is a easily picked up mobile screen. It's tackable on one side, whiteboard on the other. People can put this around their desk or their focus area, and then people can have a meeting on the other side of it. We have individual touchdown spaces where instead of going into one of these rooms here, maybe they just want to do some heads down work here or have a we collaboration with two folks opposite each other, but still in an enclosed, safe environment. And then we have adjacent spaces for me and we work to let people toggle back and forth. And again, we've got people with technology very close nearby. We'll address the technology on a later slide, but we have a screen here. We have a screen here. We have a screen in this room up here. We have lots of areas. We have phone booths people can go into. We have individual workstations. We have a collaborative area here. These are really neat. These are called AirPods. These are a modular conference room or meeting room system with a louvered roof and air filtration system. Anytime someone opens the door to this room, the louvers on the top of the room open and exchange the air in the space. Fixed to fluid, okay? We talked about mobility and changing the rooms into different applications as we need them or different size groups as we need them. So in this slide, we've created new distance and seating in the furniture to increase occupancy, right? We may want to use this room for 4 people sometimes, 8 people sometimes. We may want to turn it into classroom style and do it in rows other times. We have the mobility, we have the technology, and we have the screens and privacy for people to interact in a variety of different ways. But what do we notice in both of these floor plans? Big open spaces. This is modular wall here. There may be workstations on the other side of this. So we really need to think about the flexibility and the multimodal spaces that allow for traditional learning or active collaboration. We need to arrange the space in multiple ways with movable screens and boundaries. I'm going to turn on my camera again here. I'm going to open this up. You may not be able to see it, but this is a big mobile room divider, and they come in a variety of heights. We use them constantly in the workplace. When one of my coworkers is on a call, they'll put them around their workstation. If we're going to have a meeting in a collaborative area, they'll roll them over there. They're tackable. They have whiteboard on them. You can mount screens to them. So it's really an easy mobile way for people to have control over their workspace. Okay, open and enclosed. So again, we've already addressed open and enclosed, and me and we and fixed to fluid in the previous floor plans. They are not exclusive to each other. They will all be interlaced, but this is open versus enclosed. We have modular wall creating a classroom over here or a training room. All of these tables are mobile. All of the stools are mobile. We have technology in here. We have a screened in area here that has built-in storage. We have mobile whiteboards. We have an area where people can have heads down space and a phone booth. We have these whiteboard caddies that can be moved anywhere in the workspace and used that are also freestanding and can be used as a room divider. So it's serving the purpose as a learning tool and a room divider and easily moved around the space. We have more spots for individual privacy to keep distractions at bay. So people can go into a phone booth here. They can go into a modular walled office here or meeting room here. Or they could take one of these classroom tables, take these little caddy whiteboard pieces and put them around their table to create an individual private workspace. Again, what is the key to all this? A large open floor plan that is architecturally open. And finally, braiding the digital and physical. So we have lots of screens and technology available, both mobile and fixed, in lots of different types of areas. So we have people that can be distanced on the sofa here. We have people that can be distanced behind it here with biophilic design incorporated into the workspace. We have people that can have small collaboration groups, big collaboration groups, and we also have people that can have, individual work time if they want, and can incorporate these screens right here and move them anywhere they want, anytime they want. But the access to the large-scale mobile devices in the open environment lets teams work through problems on demand. The technology has got to be there, and the power to plug in that technology has got to be there. And you know what? Shielding doesn't always have to be boring. It doesn't have to be a ugly gray felt screen. It can also be have some architectural and design aspects to it that enhance and inspire the workspace. So, personal work. I want to show you some images of what personal work may look like in the future in your spaces. So this is called the Steelcase Work Tent. They are available now, and you would be able to reserve these or go in and have small collaborative groups or individual work. I don't know if any of you, Wayne mentioned that I'm a foodie. I don't know if any of you have heard of the yurts at restaurants, the yurt villages. I've seen them in Austin, I've seen them in New Orleans, I've seen them in San Francisco. But you can go to a restaurant that has an outdoor area, and you can, instead of reserving a table, you can reserve a yurt and have your meal in there in an enclosed area. It is cleaned every time after it's done. And then we have mobile screens that can be put around a work table for people to have heads down individual focus work. And then if you want to address it from a little bit more of an architectural standpoint, you could do modular walls that could be individual work areas with sliding doors and their own air filtration systems. Here's an actual picture instead of a rendering of the Steelcase workplace yurts. Here's an actual picture of the workstations with the screens that can be wrapped around tables. They can be height adjustable tables. You'll notice this table already has its own screen attached to it. It attaches with magnets. It's an acrylic screen. It can be cleaned easily each time. So double layer of, but even if we didn't have these wraps here, these mobile tables could be moved around with these screens on them to offer personal safety and heads down time. Here's some other examples of personal workspaces. Again, louvered mobile conference rooms or mobile workspaces that can be easily built anywhere and moved anywhere in your workplace. The louvered roof that exchanges the air and filters it each time the door opens. It has technology built into it. Mobile screens that can be easily moved and surround any work area or collaborative area. We can go back to old-fashioned workplace panels. I've been in the workplace long enough that I used to sell Herman Miller workstations that were 85 inches tall. I'm sure some of you facility managers remember those days when you'd look over a sea of workstations, all 85-inch tall 8x8s, right? We still have that ability to utilize those panels if you have people that are going to have more permanent work areas depending on their job function. Again, modular walls can be built in any configuration out of any materials, laminates, wood veneer, glass, tackable surfaces. They can have electrical built into them. They can have plumbing built into them that allows us to do a variety of work environments with modular walls that are able to be reconfigured. And again, old-fashioned workplace panels. We have a collaborative area on one side of the spine. We have a partially enclosed height adjustable work area opposite that collaborative area, and then maybe two, a little bit more traditional old style workstations there. Now, really want to mention this because as facility managers, I think we think about our buildings most importantly, and we don't think about what people are working like at home. I wish I could see you all right now because I guarantee you some of you are in bad lighting right now. I guarantee you some of you have given up your height adjustable work surface that you may have had at the office, and you are working at a kitchen table. We need to think about addressing people's home work environments as organizations, giving them stipends or giving them a budget if they are going to be working at home in the hybrid workforce, if they're going to be working at home a few days a week, and we're going to allow companies and employees to do that. We need to have their home work environments be up to the standard of their building work environments. Collaboration spaces. So again here, we see a lot of mobility. We see these movable screens. We see a variety of settings, both seated, standing, bar height. We see mobile technology incorporated into the workspace. We see a big open room where people have multiple environments that they can have meetings or work in, and we also have some heads down workspace that they can attach screens to. More collaborative spaces. So instead of having an enclosed conference room that we talked about earlier, we would have a conference room and an open space. And maybe that conference room is bordered by some architectural storage fixtures and mobile screens, so it forms a conference room and an open space, but it allows us to prevent the transmission of COVID in that closed space. More examples of collaborative spaces and renderings, lots of different environments, individual work tables, mobile work tables. These have wheels on them within a space, lots of technology, lots of whiteboards for people to utilize. These phone booths are fantastic, but if we're going to have phone booths, how are we going to address if COVID can linger in spaces? How are we going to address the air inside those? Are they going to be cleaned every time someone uses a phone booth? That sounds a little bit like a facilities nightmare. So we need to think about that in our O&M practices. How are we going to address those closed individual spaces? Our phone booths are coming with air exchange systems and a 5-layered filter system that will exchange the air each time someone uses the phone booth. And social spaces. And I just want to mention again, it's very important that none of these are exclusive to each other. A social space may also be a conference room, may also be a learning space, and may also be a heads down space, all at the same time, right? So we need to start thinking about the multimodal workspace. Learning spaces, right? We may have people calling in from home. They need to be access the technology, but we need to spread these people out in a comfortable and inspiring way instead of maybe just tables in a row, that they feel inspired to come and learn and exchange ideas and collaborate. Here's another example of a learning space. Lots of mobile screens and mobility here, access to technology, some bordering architectural design aspects. And then we're here to help. So, I don't just do this for my health. We have tools, including workplace diagnostic capabilities. We can do survey scans of your workplace to see where people are congregating. We can set up a consultation with you, but reach out to your other partners and your existing vendors. Ask them what they might have as tools for you to address these issues we're all facing of getting people back to work safely. And I think I've talked nonstop now for like 52 minutes or close. So I'm going to let Josh and Wayne open up the floor to questions.
Thanks, Christian. For those of you that have questions, please type those into the chat window, and Joshua will peruse through those and ask the questions of Christian. Christian, this is extremely helpful content, and I've already got a bunch of people I would like to send this recording to once it's complete, which will be posted on the CFC website. But I want to say that I have some. This is an interesting theory because we're going to need, like you're saying, to marry this technology with the O&M management that goes around supporting things like this. And
Yeah.
I even think building code is going to need to change in some ways. Just one comment I received is in Oakland, they want to consider those pods, those individual enclosed pods, to be actual workplaces, and they need to route sprinklers into each one, which would defeat the mobile aspect of those things. So I think this is going to push into things like building code and architecture, like you're saying. I think that was a really good point you made about that aspect of things having to change as well.
Well, yeah, and Wayne, can you hear me, Wayne, by the way?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, and I think I'm glad you mentioned that. One thing we need to think about is it's multimodal, right? So it's not, hopefully Oakland, right? But hopefully everywhere, we're not just going to have those phone booths. We may have those phone booths that are sprinkler piped. I did a project for BP out in Houston, about 2,000 workstations, and they had banks and banks and banks of phone booths. And they made us pipe them for sprinklers, and it was a big deal and a big cost. But hopefully, if you did have to pipe those for sprinklers where they couldn't be mobile, you would right near that area have a variety of mobile, different levels of privacy and collaboration areas right outside that, where there were choices for people to use. And I think that's what it's about. It's about choice for the employee and the organization and the group of where they're going to go work. Maybe that phone booth is just fine sometime, and they can work in there. And there's a cleaning schedule that's done multiple times a day in those phone booths, depending on sensors in those phone booths that show how much they're being occupied. And it automatically puts in a ticket to your maintenance team and your cleaning crew that this bank of phone booths has been used a lot and needs to get more high touch cleaning. So, just like anything we do in design, we design it and we build it, and then unfortunately we turn it over to facility managers and ask them to figure out how they're going to maintain it and operate it. So I think we need to all address that as a group, and I think we're in the infancy of that. And I think the facilities management professionals will catch up with that. But I think it's about that multimodal. It's not just one thing. There's other alternatives right near there that people can choose.
Got it. Joshua, do you have any questions?
Yes, I have quite a few here. A lot of people are asking, first off, they're loving the presentation. They're wanting copies of the slides. Is that going to be made available or no?
This is a brand new presentation for me. I know the whole presentation is recorded, including my slides, going to be recorded and posted on the CFC website. So that is one way to access that. I will check on the actual, like sending an email attachment with the program. We've spent a lot of time developing this program, so let me check on that. I'm happy to. I'm making a note here. Let me check on that, and we can follow up on getting that out to everyone if it's okay.
Great. Another question here is, how is productivity being measured across all departments, especially that don't have metrics in place to measure against?
Well, I'm not on the level of measuring the workplace productivity. But I think that there are a variety of metrics depending on the individual work group and what their function is. I don't know if it's, if you're a mortgage company, if it's number of mortgages written, or if it's a amount of a certain a piecework that a group needs to do, or hitting certain financial goals, or hitting certain measured goals as an organization where you can see, hey, we're not executing as many facilities tickets this fast. There's all kinds of data and analytics driven software that is definitely not my area of expertise that measures productivity, software systems, and what people do. But I think it needs to be addressed by what type of work those groups are doing. It may be different for an HR department than it is for the engineering department. So often those groups come up with their own metrics, right? It might be the speed of which we return construction documents on a project. It might be the amount of errors that are being committed on plans that are being caught on a punch list. So I think that measuring the productivity before and after is important, because we need to always do workplace surveys, right? We always need to see if what we studied in the beginning is what actually turned out to be. And I think it's often that's not true, that it doesn't work, right? I want to give a quick example of that. So we built a space for a company in Chicago, and we built this really cool collaborative space. Wayne has heard this example 1,000 times. We built this really neat collaborative space, open floor plan. Only the CEO and the chief counsel had private offices. Everybody went to workstations. We surveyed them to death before, asked them what was important to them. We designed this incredible space. Nobody was using the collaborative space. And we couldn't figure out why. And finally, we went in and just started surveying individual employees. And finally, one person finally told us, we don't use the space because it's in view of the CEO's office. And we don't want him to think we're not working and we're lollygagging around. So we thought it had something to do with the furniture in there. We tried all these different things. It had nothing to do with that. It was a culture issue, right? So I think the bottom line is data is king. You need to get as much information as you can, analyze that information, and be willing to make changes as often as needed in the workplace, and admit when you've done something wrong that's not addressing your employees' needs.
Another question is, how do you see secured space designed, space where confidential information is being worked on?
Great question, right? I think it goes back to, this is not a fix-all for everybody. We're not going to have everybody, just like with the open office, I just mentioned a chief counsel, right? There may be HR professionals. There may be groups within your space that still need specific space to address their functional needs. So I don't mean to say that any of the floor plans I showed you, this is an overview addressing issues that have been arising for many years in the workplace, and then especially exacerbated by COVID, and how we can adapt to those issues and address them. But you're still going to have different employees and companies that have different functions that maybe are all tech companies, right? Which often drives workplace design. You're going to have to address for what those people need. But I will say, they may have a dedicated private office that you have enhanced cleaning practices in. They may be an HR person or working on something that's proprietary for the company that they need to work on only in an enclosed office without screens being visible to people walking by or anybody else. I get that, but I think those people will still also need nearby the choice to, when they're not doing that work, going out to a collaborative area and working with their team. And maybe it's orientation, right? Maybe all the people on their team who are allowed to look at that proprietary work are all enclosed with screens or mobile screens in a certain area. And it's known that that particular area is for this particular group and not for other groups on the floor. And it's in an area that's adjacent to where their private offices are. So I think you can address that in design. I do think you can address that with design.
Thank you. So where did you get the guidelines for how high the panels should be?
The guidelines, I don't know if I mentioned any guidelines other than the guideline of I think they need to be um, I think they need to be where people are not able to look over them and speak over them and exchange, for lack of a better term, breath and bodily fluids as we cough and do different things. We're still going to be wearing masks in the workplace. I don't think that's going away anytime soon. But I think that, even standing in a collaborative area, I think the panels need to address, be that height. But I think they also need to be flexible. The one right behind me here, it's probably hard to see. It's this big giant mobile unit. I can move it around. I don't know if you can see that, but it moves around just with a little handle here. That comes in 3 different heights and can be, so it comes in a 1 high that is probably 42 inches tall. The second one is 84 inches tall, and it actually has a 3rd layer on top of that. And you can order them all 3 ways and retrofit them and stack on top of them if you need to. So again, something that's flexible that maybe you can change the height on. Workstations that have stackers, what we call them. You might have a 42-inch panel in your workplace. We add a 12-inch stacker and then a 12-inch stacker on top of that. That might be glass. Allow your flexibility. Don't just order the 85-inch tall panel. Do something that can be modified.
Wayne, this one might be for you, actually. He's asking about how do you clean acoustic spaces?
Acoustic space. So how do you clean the type of material used for acoustic spaces? That could be the question. Maybe I'll give a broad answer here. If you have these wide open spaces, you are going to need to treat both the air as well as the surfaces. And in terms of the air, that's a function of what you're doing with air exchange and filtration and so forth, which is more of a function of HVAC. It can be with spot filtration, like the unit that Christian mentioned there that can go into these areas. They're going to need to be sized appropriately for the amount of cubic feet that you're trying to filter. As far as surfaces go, it's going to have to follow basic O&M guidelines and CDC guidelines. So I would always err to make sure you're at least following what the CDC says, so you're compliant in case there's an issue in your organization. But if anybody needs specific information on that, they're more than welcome to reach out to me personally, because it's going to be different depending on different surfaces. A lot of disinfectant can't be used on porous surfaces. It can only be sanitized and not disinfected. So it gets pretty dicey at a certain level. But what we're really worried about in most cases is airflow. Christian, I got one for you while I got the mic on here. You and I have something in common here, where for years we were going to IFMA conferences and taking classes that were all telling us about how difficult millennials would be to work with. And in our personal experience, we didn't find that. We found that this was a group of extremely driven, talented people who didn't meet that kind of stereotype that we were being taught. I see this kind of workplace is still in the multi-generational workspace. You're still putting this new thing now among boomers down to Ys, and how do you, because we had to re-educate them on how to use beanbag chairs in front of the CEO. What do you perceive? Is there a re-education that's going to need to go along with this kind of new trend to tell people how to use these spaces?
You know what, Wayne, I forgot to mention that in my presentation. And by the way, thank you, everyone. This is the first time I've done this presentation, so I just wanted to get through my slides. Normally, I kind of have a little bit more back and forth, but I think that's a huge part of it, right? This is a changing of culture in the workplace. It is not just new furniture, right? So I think that as facilities managers, HR professionals, and at WeWork, and some of you may have heard this term, we have workplace experience managers now who are kind of hybrid facility managers. Some of you in the audience may be workplace experience folks. Workplace evolutionaries, the IFMA group really addresses that. But I think we need to educate people on how to interact with this space. Just like when I work with a client to design a new space for them and provide a lot of furniture and a new building for them. We offer, as part of our service, we offer, kind of a seminar. We bring new employees in. Here's your new workstation. Here's how to utilize this technology. Here's, where the bathrooms are. But we need to do that in a more holistic way now and say, here's how these screens are mobile. Here's how these whiteboards hang on top of them. Here are 6 different areas in this space that you can go to and have heads downward. Here is the 4 different areas in this space that you can go to with your team and have a collaborative meeting. And here's how the seating chart is in those areas that allows us to be distanced in those areas. Here's where the mobile technology is. Here's how to move that mobile technology to areas. It's not as simple, they will, if you build it, they will come. You need to educate people on how to interact with that space. And I think that's done through a variety of departments and probably starts with leadership, right? They need to buy into it. It's not just, hey, there's your new layout, go work. People will go back to bad habits. As organizations, we really need to encompass this into our culture of our office, so that people will be inspired and want to use the space in a safe and engaging way. But yes, I will just say, when I worked with all 27-year-olds with MBAs at WeWork, and advanced degrees, I could not. I agree 1,000% that they were the exact opposite of some of the world workplace seminars that I went to, which described those people. They were almost the polar opposite of the way they were described, and very talented, very engaging, very dedicated employees.
Christian, I've got one final question here before we close, and this is important. I'll ask the question and then make a quick comment first. The question is, we talked about the C-suite, so how do you present this concept to them in a way that is inspiring and compelling? I will say that IFMA has a lot of content on this. FEA does a really good presentation, Facility Engineering Associates, on delivering this. Kit Tuvison, who is with us, no longer with us, he did Dancing with the C-Suite. That content is all still available at IFMA. I can point you to that, but I would say I would ask my consultants. I would ask you, Christian, help me form a case to present to the C-suite. How do you see yourself helping? And this will be the last question we take, but any other questions, I'll put your contact information on the CFC site so people can still reach you. But how would you deal with this issue?
Well, I think that the good news is that a lot of times right now, the C-suites are actually driving this. We are only as good as our employees and our technology, and we need to figure out how to get them back into the workplace and engage. Productivity's down, it's costing us money. We've never, in our lifetime, really have never faced this before. It's all uncharted territory. They're driving this a lot. The business leaders of the world, and of the architecture world, the real estate world, the technology world, those companies, the big ones, are driving this, saying, how do we, and they often do with workplace theory and workplace practice, right? They often do it, and then it trickles down into smaller companies and trickles across the nation. So good news is I think they're already looking into it, but I think that you need to reach out to your professionals that do this. You need to bring someone like myself in, or a vendor that, ask your vendor, what can you offer me, or what can you do to help me make this case? What information you have? You better have data, right? So this Steelcase, I didn't go a lot into the data on this because I'd probably put myself to sleep, but the data is dense, broken down by country, a lot of information with stats and pie charts and graphs on how people view the workplace, first of all, after working from home for so long, and also the very scientific portion, which I didn't go into much, about how viruses are transmitted, how they're transmitted off of work surfaces, how they're transmitted in the air. There's a lot of information about that in this study that we did with MIT. They addressed the science portion of it. We addressed kind of the workplace theory portion of it. And I'll tell you, if they don't address it, they're going to be, for lack of a better term, caught with their pants down, because this is a huge issue, the biggest issue that's faced the workplace, and probably, the last 100 years. So use your resources, use your IFMA partners. I encourage all of you to go to steelcase.com and just type in work better and go to the section there. There are pages and pages and pages of documentation, studies, sample layouts, services that people like myself offer where we will come into your company, look at the space and make recommendations on your space about how certain things can be addressed, and not just from a furniture standpoint, from a people standpoint. So, please go there, hit me up on LinkedIn, send me an email. I'd love to talk to anyone and then recommend you to the appropriate people or work with you myself.
Thank you, Christian, and thank you everyone for attending. Joshua, thank you for supporting us. I will post this on the IFMA CFC website, the recording, along with Christian's contact information. And Christian, everyone can reach out to you for additional questions and information on this, and you can point them to those Steelcase studies. And thank you, Steelcase, for doing all these studies and research. Anyway, please check in next month for our next First Wednesday webinar. We've got something exciting we'll be releasing in the next week, so keep an eye out for that. Thanks again, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.